Hi, everyone. My name is Max Dugan. I'm a craft brewer with Urban Lodge Brewing Company here in Central Connecticut, and this is the Open Trail Podcast. Today, I'm joined by some old friends of mine, Daniel and Mark Barzottini, father-son duo, and today we're going to be talking about fishing, mostly ice fishing, and your experiences in the great outdoors. Thank you for being here, both of you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Dan has been like a mentor to me. I've known Dan my entire life. He's been like a mentor in ice fishing because we both have the bug, if you want to call it that, and you both have that too. Where I'll see Mark somewhere and you like can't help yourself. Like it's like you just have to talk fishing, and it doesn't matter the time of year. You just talk fishing. Well, how'd you get into it as a kid?
My grandfather fished a lot, and so he started me when I was young, and we do a few lake fishing in Stockbridge Bowl up in the Berkshires, and then I got to like ice fishing, and 9 years old, I started.
Yeah, and you're from Pittsfield, Mass, right?
I'm Pittsfield, Mass in the Berkshires.
Yep, which is Western Mass, and your father didn't fish or did?
Did not. He would drop me off fishing, but he liked to eat fish. He would not fish.
Oh, really?
He didn't really understand it that much.
Yeah. I remember you telling me there was ice on the water and he would drop you off 8 a.m. You're 9 years old or whatever. Pick you up at 4 p.m.
Yeah. Times have changed. You went out there. You end up knowing a lot of people on the water, and we knew everyone in town. But 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, you were there till 4:30. No matter what the weather was, you were out there. But it was a lot of fun, and that's I pass that on, and glad my kids like it.
Yeah, I describe it as like a healthy addiction. Like you're addicted, but it's a good thing to be addicted to. I say we now because I've joined the crew. You've been fishing a specific lake that we'll talk about today, Lake Onota, for about 60 years now. No, something like that.
That's pretty close to it. Yes.
How it's cool to have a perspective on something like that over so much time. How has it changed? I mean, I'm sure there's vast changes, but what are some of the things that you've noticed that how the lake has changed and how people's relationship with fishing and the lake?
Well, one is the access to it. We used to be able to walk off on certain points. You would just park, get dropped off, and walk. Now, a lot of out-of-state people own homes. It's fenced off. The access is limited. It's more for ice fishing. There's public boat launches, but we have to walk pretty far. And as you probably know, you walk probably about a mile from where you get dropped off to the point where we fish. You can't get off to that point by the houses anymore. So
it's to give some perspective, the lake itself is 650 acres or so. It's a very big lake, and there's hundreds of properties on the shoreline.
Yes.
So
pretty lined.
Yeah, it's and there's not, in terms of public shoreline, almost nothing. I mean, there's a couple boat launches, right? So there's public access to it.
Right.
But it's not like there's, vast parks that surround the shore of this lake.
No, and it's a great lake, and the water depth has changed. There's a small pond and a big pond. They're connected, but there's a sandbar. And we fished it just a few weeks ago, and the small pond is really almost separated now by the sandbar and the water.
Yep.
So it's changed there. And everyone used to fish the small pond. Now
they'll change that year to year and throughout the year by draining part of the lake through the dam there, right?
Right. There's a water, they raise it, emergency water supply, so they'll raise it and lower it. But that affects it where you fish in the summer and in the winter.
Oh, for sure. I also mentioned that Onota it's in Western Mass in the Berkshires. It supplies the Housatonic River, which people in Connecticut, it flows down through Western Connecticut and out into Long Island Sound somewhere, Fairfield-ish area, Fairfield County. Dan, me and you both, we grew up where like sports was everything, and we had, like, you had your father, I had my dad, and family that always had interest in the outdoors. But it wasn't until, for me personally, it wasn't until I stopped playing competitive sports that I got into and really just dove all into the outdoors. And it's like the same thing with you, or what?
Yeah, I think baseball primarily, like you were talking about, like where we met each other as small children, was like priority. But I think like fishing had little pockets, especially in the summer, until I started ice fishing when I was like 12. But like early memories are we would go to the Cape area in Plymouth for like a week, and that whole week we'd stay on a pond, and I would fish that whole time. We had a few ponds within under a mile from growing up at our house in Manchester, where he'd bring me in like panfish for, I don't know, for bluegill for like an hour or so. So like you said, I think sports obviously like top priority, but if there was a random hour, like I might go fishing for like bass or something. But until recently, it's definitely taking the top priority to our playing days.
It's changed a lot. Yeah. I'd say our relationship with it. It's the same thing. It's like even today, it's whenever I have time to do it. As much as you want to spend all your time doing the thing you love, it's like the realities of life are there.
Totally.
But so let's talk, one, ice fishing in general, which has so many people have so many preconceived notions about it. There's a lot of like, I don't want to say hate out there for it necessarily, but you bring up ice fishing and people are like, it sounds like the most boring thing in the world. It sounds very cold and miserable. Are they right?
And on top of that, we always laugh because people that don't ice fish, and you get this all the time, I think at work, the first thing they always said, like, what do you do? You just go out and get hammered? Or like, no, we
there's
don't.
that,
Like, we're
definitely
not just
that.
drinking. Yeah. Are they right as like, is it great? Like, is it hard or crazy? Or what was the question? Like,
I mean, I'm half joking, but there's like, it is cold. I mean, you're on ice. It has to be cold. There's no way around that part.
Yeah.
Is it boring? Because the way you approach it is like anything could be boring. You're hanging out let's talk more specifically about how you guys approach it. You're not fishing by yourself.
Right.
You're with either each other, a group of friends, family, whatever it might be. So you're mitigating boredom with really like spending time with people and the enjoyment of their company. Right. So it's not as much about the sole pursuit of some species of fish. What you're doing is experiencing each other. You're experiencing just your time together.
Right. And I guess coming from a place, if someone's never ice fished before, and definitely jump in, Dad, but is it boring? It wouldn't be boring, but it can be slow. Like being like, if you're going for your first time and you're expecting to catch like 10 fish with a bunch of friends, like you might not. And I guess a quick story is the first time my dad and Joe brought me ice fishing, his good friend Joe from Pittsfield as well.
Shout out to Joe.
They
Joe
brought me.
Joe will come up. Joe will come up many times, I'm sure.
Right after college, they brought me on their annual ice fishing trip, which you could always get into up in Maine. We fished 4 days in a row. It was 0 degrees every day with extreme negative conditions. 4 days, 8-hour days. We caught 1 fish. So the fishing can be slow, but tough. I have extreme memories of it. I wouldn't say it was boring at all. Like you almost tell about like the painful stories of like waking up in -20, almost like a badge of honor in a weird way. So I don't know. It's not boring, but it can be slow.
I'll also point out, I've had days of fishing where it's like you can't even drop your lure in the water without a fish grabbing it. It is great. I'm not going to say like, oh, what a shame, I'm catching fish, but that can get old and boring very quickly too. There's like this fine line you walk between what's pursuing something that's difficult and then wanting success. But then it's like when success comes in this great waterfall, it's almost like, much. Well, would I work hard enough for it? I don't know,
A lot. The two of those topics, one of the preconceived notions about ice fishing, everybody goes, oh, you go out in a hut and it's warm and you're watching TV and no, we bring a pop-up tent to keep out of the wind occasionally, but we are out there on the ice. And catching fish, we go pike fishing, which is the large fish, ice fishing, which is what we seek out. You don't want to have too many bites because your gloves are off. Trying to find, and it gets cold. So, we had our record break. We had 6 bites at once, 6 flags at once for pike fishing, which is sort of unheard of. And we were sort of laughing. We'll always remember that. But you don't want too many because you want to keep your hands in your gloves to stay warm once in a while.
Let's touch on, you just said flags. I want to explain some very basic, and there's so many ways in which you can ice fish and people, it's like there's different cultures around it in different parts of the country, and then there's different species that people pursue. You guys generally like looking for big pike. Okay, so northern pike is generally speaking, a large growing predatory fish, very aggressive, very fast swimmers, sharp teeth. They're cool as hell, objectively speaking. It's just a very cool fish. And mixed in with that, you'll also be kind of targeting smallmouth bass, which is a super popular fish for people to target all throughout most of the lower 48. People are fishing for smallmouth bass. Now, specifically, what you guys do is you'll bring out tip ups, okay, and you'll drill a hole in the ice, and I'll work through this from A to Z, and you guys can jump in wherever. You're going out on the ice, safe ice. I guess first thing to start would be safe ice is 6 inches of clear ice. Right?
I think that's plenty. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
plenty,
4 to 6 inches of clear ice. This is not check your local stuff. Don't listen to me.
Don't trust me. Yeah.
I'll say this now that it's warm out. 4 to 6 inches of clear ice. You always want to bring like a spud bar with you or something to check and make sure you have enough thickness. And then you're going to be finding a place where you're going to drill through the ice with an auger, and you're going to drill a hole that's 6 or 8 or 10 inches in diameter. And then on top of that hole, you're going to set up this very simple mechanism called a tip up. What a tip up is, it's a spool of fishing line. There's a hook on one end where you're going to put on your lure or your live bait or whatever it is you're using. And you're going to lower that down with a weight. You're going to lower that into the water to your desired depth. And then you are going to there's a fluorescent flag that is kind of spring loaded to pop up. You're going to set that in the down position. Now, whenever a fish grabs onto that lure on the other end and pulls it, that flag is actuated and tip up. You get your name. What did I miss? Anything?
That
No.
pretty much gets it.
Nailed
Okay.
it. Like
So,
you said.
and the regulations change throughout states and species and lakes and everything. But what we do on specifically Lake Onota in the Berkshires, you could do 5 per person. Is that right?
Yeah, 5 per
Correct.
license.
5 per license holder. And the way you target fish, so 5 per, and then the trips that we take, there's up to 10 guys.
Yeah.
So it could be a lot of drilling, right? A lot of holes. Sometimes the lake looks like Swiss cheese after. A lot of tip ups, a lot of gear. Dan spends a lot of time organizing. Go through the week ahead of that trip.
Yeah. No, I'm a
what's
little
involved?
anal about it too, because like you said, we go with a group of 10 guys ice fishing, and like we said, you can have up to 50 traps in the water. Tip ups, another word for tip ups is traps.
Yeah.
Like at the same time, I think our max number this year was 30 or 35 in the water at the same time, because 50 would just get out of control. But like you said, the prep goes into it. The line that you lower into the water, like you could just lower it down. Sometimes it's a rope is the line and just tie a hook to it. But we usually do kind of rope line, then separate it by a clear leader.
Right.
So what I like to do ahead of time is check every single one of those leaders to make sure there's no like kinks in it. So basically the whole goal is, if a fish, and especially a big fish, catches it, it's not going to break off, and I wouldn't be able to forgive myself. So
leader,
it takes hours.
And let me jump in quick. A leader
Yeah.
that Dan's describing is like, this is common in so many types of fishing, where you'll have the it could be whatever length of fishing line on your spool, but then at the very end you'll have some determined amount of leader, and leader is generally speaking stronger than your line, and you're doing it so that if a fish hits that lure or that bait hard and bites, it's not going to break that line, which has a tensile strength that's rated for the fish, but isn't going to just chew through and snap off right off the bat.
Totally.
Exactly.
And
So
we-
you're leading your lure, if you will, with that section of line.
Yeah,
Right.
And a lot of time in ice fishing, the actual line that you lower down is like rope.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's green.
Yeah, it's
so
like
I think
it's a
woven. Part of
woven,
yeah, it's strong.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it too for the leader is that the fish, it looks very natural to them. It's like clear, they can't see it, but the rope might hang, like drag the bait down, make it look a little unnatural. So I don't know, it might be just superstition, but I think it separates the rope from the actual line itself too.
I wouldn't say it's superstition, because you have tapered leaders like in fly fishing, which is
Right.
something else we don't really need to get into, but you'll have such fine lures that you're trying to get a fish to bite, and you're making this lure look very realistic to an insect, like a hatching insect or something. And the leader is tapered down to be very, very, very small at the end. And it's almost invisible to the naked eye. So you're really trying to, fight against the fish's senses of sight to make sure that you're not just, putting something out there that it's not going to want to go for.
Right.
Yeah, and with fishing for pike are aggressive, like you mentioned, and they're feeding, and they're getting ready to spawn. usually, in the spring. So they're really hungry that time of year. And going back, how it's evolved too is when we started fishing back in the late 60s, 70s, used a nylon-coated metal leader.
Yeah.
About 7 or 8 inches, so the pike couldn't bite through the line. But that you probably could see. You think you could see it.
Yep.
But there was a lot of fish caught back in those days. Now you use the fluorocarbon, the monofilament thin line, without getting too technical. So maybe you get more bites. Do you catch bigger fish? I don't know.
And I think it's relevant too for someone. I mean, if you're wondering, look up on Google image search pike's teeth. Like,
nasty.
It's pretty crazy. They're very sharp and a lot of sharp teeth.
Yes.
So you wouldn't be, when you say like a braided steel line or whatever it is, it's not that surprising when you see what their teeth look like.
It's like bluefish if you're fishing ocean fishing.
Sure. Yeah.
Freshwater barracuda. That's green.
Yes.
Yes. That is a good.
Looks like that.
So, anyways, let's get back to how this trip, because I mean, I love this trip. First of all, it's fun for a number of reasons. So many of our friends look forward to it, and Dan does a lot of work to sort of get it together. With 10 guys, there's like you said, there's a lot of work that goes into it, but a lot of these guys have almost no fishing experience, which in my opinion makes it more fun because it lets you see somebody who doesn't experience that thrill of having a fish on the end of a line every day, and to see what that looks like to them and how it feels to them is, I mean, that's as great a feeling as even catching the fish yourself, is just watching them experience it. Like
100%.
Yeah.
Like I almost put on do my improv version of like a fishing guide that week. My whole goal is to get my buddies that especially don't fish a lot to catch fish and just see their eyes light up when something's happening, and just like you can see the new experience like running through them as it's happening.
And you do a great job with that. I've made that joke that you're like our guide when we're out on the water. When we have 10 guys that get together and do this, we like to make some fun out of it. We do like, it sounds a little dirty, but it's really, it's more so just our like very basic form of entertainment. We'll throw in like 10 or 20 bucks each to try and make like some sort of, we'll have teams do like a draft, have teams of people pulling fish out of the water, and then have 20 bucks in so that the pot is maybe, I don't know, 200 bucks or something, whatever.
Nothing life-changing.
It's not life-changing money, but it allows you to really be invested when the thing that you're doing is kind of like objectively difficult, right? Like we were saying before, like it is cold. If you're not used to putting yourself through that sort of scenario and being on the ice for 8 hours, it can be difficult to pass time. So I think just having some literal investment in it helps. Really, it's not at all about the money, though.
No,
not even close.
But it's evolved. It's been funny. Like we did like silly trophies this year.
We did,
like, we throw money in the pot. But like you said, like it just kind of like dangle a carrot in front of some of the guys. Like, all right, like I'm not gonna take it serious, but I'm gonna like have some fun and like have some camaraderie and have some funny stories with. Even the group of 10 that we have is great, but then you have your micro teams that you even like bond with even more like while you're on the ice. So it's just really fun while you're out there waiting for fish.
Yeah, I find so much enjoyment because usually that trip when you guys go up,
right.
the 10 of you, I go up with my friend, hello Joe again, who
Hi,
I've
Joe.
been ice fishing with for probably about 50 years, and we fish fairly close to them, and we have just so much joy watching these guys run around. Most of them aren't ready for ice fishing as far as dressing warm, so they're freezing. They want to stay huddled, out of the wind. And when they get the bites, they not really know what to do. So they'll fish will be running.
We'll be hooting and hollering.
And we just
you'll
have
hear us across the ice,
and
which is fun.
Joe goes, "We got to help them next year. We got to help them cut the holes because Dan's out there cutting 40 holes." And talk about cutting holes. We just bought an electric auger this year,
which makes an enormous
My friends
difference.
had one for years. Dan cut hand holes, about 40 hand holes with
Max did as well.
Manual auger.
Yeah.
So that's part of the trend where it's a little bit easier.
I know everything's easier on young people now, huh?
But just to shout it too, the older guys, we were fishing a little ways away. We caught the fish though, even though they didn't get any. We
You You did.
Yeah.
We got to compare. We got to compare and contrast like our last 2 trips to Onota, because it can show you what a good day on the ice can be, and then what a really tough day can be.
Oh yeah.
And let's I don't know which one you want to start. Let's start with the good one. So 2 years ago we were out, basically same group of guys, and overall really the same setup, right? It's like nothing changed in how you approached your rigging of these traps. Nothing changed with where we were fishing, the specific spots and depths and all that. The bait didn't change. What you use for bait is live shiners. A shiner is in the minnow family, right? It's a native minnow to this area, between 3 to 6 inches in size.
Yep.
And what happened 2 years ago?
That was awesome. I mean, it was one, we got lucky with weather. I think it was like for ice fishing, 35 degrees and sunny is like might as well be a 90-degree summer day.
Perfect.
So we all got out there. What was our total? You archived it all. I think about 10 guys, similar amount of tip ups in the water, 30. I think we caught 18 fish.
Yeah.
About that. So some guys we rotate. We get everyone, like if you get a fish, the next guy's up in line. So everyone had a chance at least 2 fish that year, and I think some people caught 3. But we caught again 18 fish. You had the biggest bass. It was close to a 5-pound smallmouth bass, which is awesome. And then we caught a nice pike at the end, almost 7-pound pike, which isn't crazy big, but for someone that's never caught one before, which
7.5.
Jess, 7.5 pounds.
It was a really sizable.
It was a
pike.
first time pike catch for the guy Jesse Robinson that caught it, and it was amazing. You heard that one across the lake.
We did.
That was the fish around the
We
world.
heard the screams.
And well, part of that is like so loaded because Jesse, I mean, he's not an outdoorsman.
No, his first time ever going, he wore jeans and New Balance, I think, on the ice. I swear.
He had sneakers on. Yeah,
he didn't complain though.
No, he was good about. He's definitely good about that. He's a great sport out there. The smallmouth bass in Onota, phenomenal. I mean, a great, like really great fishery there. They have a color to them too. We noted this last time because you got one. It's just like this beautiful, like vibrant copper metallic color that, like, I mean, around here, a lot of smallmouths are very like green, like almost, I mean, darker than your shirt, but they have like this really, really nice, like bright sheen to them.
And
camo.
little football looking fish.
They are.
And they when you get a bite on them, they do run well. They take out a lot of line, and it's fun, and everyone gets excited. You guys caught a lot of them. We caught some. They're just that time of the year they're in, and you get a few, and you guys were fortunate to run into them, as opposed to this year where you had one fish.
Yeah, well something like that. But I think
something like
that. On the year that we did a lot, where we fish is, I think it's a big drop off, so like it gets deep pretty quickly, and it's all rocks. And smallmouth bass typically hang out by the rocks. I think one of their primary targets for what they eat is like crayfish, so they hang out right in the rock area. So the goal is to get those minnows right off the bottom, right where the kind of depth starts going a little bit down, where the depth changes, and hopefully they're hanging out right in the rock beds, and we've run into them.
You're touching on a couple of things I want to mention. One is when you're on the ice, unless you have a boat, which often people don't, it's just the reality. You're limited to fishing on the shore of a lake, and when you ice fish, is this really great thing where it's big. If the ice is good, you could just fish any part of the lake that you want and try anything, right? So you can experiment with different depths, and one of the things you brought up is you want to be targeting any sort of underwater features, any elevation changes, rock piles, even fishing like beds of certain lake weeds that have died off in the winter or something. Like you're looking for something different that's not just this plain flat, right, plateau. How do you think about this?
It's exactly, you try to target different depths. And going back to how you find that depth, before the electronics, you had a lead weight you put on your hook, fastened, lowered it to the bottom.
Yeah.
And if it was 30 feet of water, you had to do that. Make a little knot, put the bait on, and if you got a fish, you had to resound it. That's what we call finding the depth. Now you have a little electronic tool. You just push in the water, and it tells you how deep it is.
It's a laser.
Terrible. It's so handy.
It's
like a
it's
flashlight.
quicker, and it's warmer for your hands, too. Again, it's a lot of warmth in ice fishing. You try to stay warm.
Yeah. And Mark sounded a little salty about how things are now.
Yeah, I mean,
Did you walked to school uphill both ways too, right?
You got occasionally uphill, barefoot.
The other thing is that when you're ice fishing, well, and this is one method of it, you get to hand line a fish, right? So you're actually holding on to the line and feeling that fish in your hands. Whereas like I shouldn't say, but the majority of fishing, you're utilizing the leverage of a rod, which is still an exhilarating feeling, and you can still definitely feel what's going on, but it's very different to be holding and pulling up the fish right until it comes through that little hole in the ice, which is just a different sort of experience for somebody.
Totally. It's a little more primal in a sense where you're like really feeling the fish like on the hands. And I think some people are surprised by, because I don't know, you see someone pull up a fish with their hands, like, oh, it's easy. It's not really fighting, but they'll surprise you like on the pullback. And I think especially our friends, like you always hear me say it when they're fighting a fish, the biggest mistake they do is when the fish pulls, they want to pull back and sometimes the hook comes out. So you almost have to let it like feed it through your hands, keep the tension, almost like everything a rod's doing for you with slack and stuff like that. You do it super manual. You don't have to do it like you said. There's many ways, but I personally like the hand line just to, I don't know, stay a little old school, I guess.
It is. It's cool. It's like a connection, like one step closer to catching the fish.
And to me, there's nothing better. You get that bite, you're playing it with your hands on the line, like you said, and then you get it close and you actually see what it is.
Yeah.
Now, some of if the bass are big, but 4 to 5 pounds, you can get that through the hole pretty easy. The pike are 10 to 20 pounds that we've seen.
The good ones, yeah.
When you get those close, you can't see the whole thing in the hole.
No. You're seeing this flash of its side, which is like a tiger's, this green and white and fluorescent color just flashing by the hole.
And that's where the hard thing, too, is you get excited. You want to just pull it right through you can't, because it won't really fit as easy, so you have to tire it out, and it's a great feeling, and it's that's the hardest thing for people to learn. What I was really proud is this year my daughter went ice fishing, and she got a big one on, but she fought it for 20 minutes, tired it out, and got it through the hole all by herself. We didn't even have to we have a hook grabber you can hook onto its mouth and pull it through the hole for the real big ones. She didn't even need that. So, I mean, that's when you say, okay, I've taught him well.
The fish she caught is unbelievable. What was the length and weight on that?
41 inches, 18 pounds.
This is one of the things that just, I whenever I see, everyone sends me every picture they get of anything. And when someone sends you a picture of a 40-inch pike,
freshwater fish,
I show it to someone and I'm like, hey, those lakes you swim in the summer? Yeah. That's what's in there. And it freaks people out in a way. They're like, are you kidding me? And then you see its teeth and it's like, it's a barracuda, like you mentioned before. Now, this isn't what you're talking about is your trip that you do annually up to Maine. Right. And there's big pike up there, which is a little different from what we're talking about with Onota. But that's, a whole other adventure in and of itself. I want to compare the 18 fish day, the really successful, beautiful sunny day. Everyone's happy to be there. Everyone caught fish, to what we experienced, I don't know, about a month or so ago now.
Totally. And like even more of the backstory on that, where we had such a successful last trip, 18 fish. We should have known better, because the night before you were there and we were setting like over-unders on how many we were going to catch. We kind of cursed ourselves. Everyone's like 15 fish, 20 fish, 12 fish, which was awesome because they had a lot of faith. But we get out there. Right when we got out there, it wasn't too cold, but wind starts blowing. It's a little bit colder than the years prior. We get 20 traps in the water, and nothing happens for the first 2 hours. And already something's like in the back of my head. I'm like, this is not right. Like,
it is difficult to stay positive. It's very difficult to stay positive.
Oh, like usually you get a setup flag. Like by the time you're done setting all 30 traps up, you're hoping to get one flag. Like, okay, we're in the right spot.
Yep.
What happened? Like at the end of the day, we caught 2 fish on the ice.
Yeah.
5-pound pike or something like that. 4-pound pike and I think it was 1.01 pound smallmouth bass. Correct. Compared to the 5-pounder that you caught years prior. So the lake. Long story short, the lake humbled us by a long shot at that time, and on top of it, we had like 30-mile-per-hour winds blowing at us the whole time.
It was cold. It was a cold day for sure.
But it was fun. Some funny stories. I'm sure people won't forget that day.
That was the day where like. When you had to walk, because you're walking around the ice, you don't want to fish all in one spot, right? It's like putting all your eggs in one basket. You try and spread out these holes that you drill and set up your traps over a decent sized area.
Totally.
So you're constantly moving back and forth to be checking on stuff, making sure that there could be false flags, there can be legitimate flags that come up, making sure that your gear is all messed up in the water. And when we were walking back into the wind, like heading south, my face between my nose and my forehead was in so much pain. Like it was just there was so cold, and I couldn't there wasn't like a way to warm up. I tried to like take my glove off and just keep my face, hand on my face. I couldn't. And it was just like this, it felt like a migraine, but it was only being caused by wind driven at my face. It was
It's nasty. Thank God we had that little pop-up tent. I think it's a 4-person tent, but I don't know. We probably had 7 dudes in there.
It became an 8-person tent real quick. There's something about, and it's not just ice fishing. It can be any pursuit in life, but that thing that you work for that becomes more rewarding the harder you worked. And there is some beauty sometimes in, like when we get back to the house after 8 hours on the ice with 10 guys and catching 2 fish, just sitting there and going, we got our asses kicked. Yeah. And just accepting that and being like, you know what, we tried and we did our best. Wouldn't have changed anything, right? I mean, totally. You wouldn't have really done anything different.
No. I mean, hindsight 2020, I probably would have fished like right offshore the whole time and try and catch perch. Just like little fish, but no, I wouldn't have changed the thing, especially from years past.
Sometimes that's just how it goes. Sometimes you do your best, and that's
hats off to the lake. And like you said earlier, you don't want it. I mean, you do want it to be great, the best trip every time, but it makes those good days even more special when you have days like you get 1 fish or even skunked and 0 fish. So you appreciate the good days after those ones for sure.
Yeah, you store those memories away for the good days, and because you're going to have bad days. But it's great to be out there all day with friends, and you get to be 8-10 hours with someone you get to talk to.
On that, I'm going to take a quick break if you don't mind.
The Open Trail podcast is sponsored by Urban Lodge Brewing Company. Creators of amazing handcrafted beer, food, good times, and great memories, with locations in Manchester and on Pratt Street in downtown Hartford, Connecticut. And Quast Media, located in Manchester, Connecticut and Nashville, Tennessee. Quast Media is an award-winning digital marketing firm producing video, digital signage systems, and interactive digital experiences.
Hey, this is Max, host of the Open Trail podcast. If you're enjoying today's conversation, then join the conversation every week. There are full episodes available on the Open Trail Podcast YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe. On top of that, follow us on social media at Open Trail Podcast. Most importantly, I want you to get outside and get after it with the people that you love and to build your relationship with the natural world. I think also one of the things that I like about ice fishing is that it is approachable for different types of people. I know it can seem so strange and not that many people take part in this thing, and it's probably hard, not probably, I'll admit, like it can be very difficult to break into, right? Yeah. And there's a few ways to mitigate that. One is finding a mentor. Like I was just lucky enough to know someone like Dan who had this community that brought him into it, and now he has done like all he can to get all these other people into it. But on top of that, you can bring anyone. You can bring your kids, right? It's like great to bring a whole family out there. How did you get Dan in and how did you with Laura, because you have a boy and a girl, how did you get her in?
Well, I guess lucky, Dan just being the oldest child, he liked to fish. So he said, we're going to go ice fishing. You dress warm because we're going to be out there all day. That's the key to ice fishing. You got to dress warm. And then my daughter started fishing with us, as Dan mentioned, like up the Cape. We would be on a little pond, and she was probably 5 or 6, or a little rowboat. We would basically just drift for hours. While my wife or their mom just sat on and enjoyed it and waved to us. And then I said one year to Laura, I said, do you want to go ice fishing? She goes, yeah, let me go. And she joined us.
Was that late? Was that later on?
Later on. She was probably
post-college.
20, yeah.
So, yeah, and this is another thing I think about a lot, because people who are brought up fishing tend to, be used to it and kind of stick with it in some way or another. But I think that you're seeing more and more of it, especially after a lot of people, it's like a response from the pandemic, where they became more interested in being more engaged with the outdoors. And I think that there's no too old or anything to get into fishing. Like I think in some ways it's a hell of a lot easier to teach an adult how to fish than a child because the patience required to teach a child how to fish. And I've done that. I've had kids of friends and I've taught them how to fish, and it's a totally different experience in itself. Dan, you are a new father, right?
Right.
You know, how old's Charlie now? One?
He's just 13 months and change.
13? Yeah. So what do you like? How do you think you're going to approach it? Like, what are some of the things you want to do with him as he, grows up?
Yeah. Like whenever he can hold his own, I'd love to get him engaged with like easy little pond fishing, like right away. I mean, like we were saying earlier, I don't know, you probably brought me when I was 6, 7. I think he brought me to some streams. We were talking earlier before we were rolling that he liked fishing so much that he'd bring me in. I wasn't holding the pole or anything, but he just basically just let me watch from shore, and hopefully I didn't run away. But
you having a backpack?
Yeah. He's still here, so he didn't run away.
No, I was good.
But
didn't float away.
One of our favorite stories is, he was probably 6. We were this small stream, but I was taking him, and I couldn't carry him in the water, so in the middle of the stream, and I just placed him on this big rock. And I said, just don't move. And I was only a few yards away, but he was going, don't leave me. And I said, don't worry, I'm not leaving you.
He saw a good spot or something.
Yeah. It was a little hole, but that was funny. And
did you found him though? He
was right there. I could see him. He was,
the trout bite was too good. He wasn't coming back. No. No, but we'll try. I'd love to get him involved even earlier if possible. And I think like teaching the patience, showing the interest. Like I don't want to force him to do anything he doesn't want to do, but I think it'll be important to show him, I guess, like actual like reinforcement of like what happens when you do go fishing. So I think my first target with him will be tiny ponds, catching bluegill like nonstop. So it just like has a reinforcement like
trying to have
fun.
success.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Which is major thing.
And then hopefully from there he catches the bug and realizes like, oh, I want to catch a bigger one. I want to catch a bigger one. And then patience comes involved, and then we'll lose him to the addiction of fishing that we're talking about.
Yeah. You mentioned something that I kind of like, where you and the Lake Onota is a perfect place for it, where it's like you have this variety of species to target, and there's this potential, and I think you described it as gambling.
Yes.
Where it's like there's the potential to catch a really big fish. And so you're not necessarily targeting and only looking for that fish. But one of the things that I always love is when I fish a new spot and I feel something on the end of the rod and I'm pulling, I don't know what it is.
Right.
That first thing that goes to your head is this flash of just excitement and confusion and wonder of what is it?
What is it?
Yeah.
Right.
And it's hard to explain, but it's a great feeling.
And Dad, you'll have to get your take on what it looks like. But when you're ice fishing, having the tip ups in, you talked about how they worked earlier. You'll have to do it to experience it. It's hard for me to describe, but when you see a flag go up, it's a rush. So it's like, what is that? Yeah. What do you feel? I don't know.
Yeah. The best thing is getting set up and seeing that first flag of the day. I mean, we're corny. We take a self
picture
of it now. These days we have cell phones. We take pictures. That's like, wow, we're out here. We got a bite.
Yep.
But no, I definitely agree with you though. The variety is fun. It's like kind of like a grab bag. You don't know what's going to be on the other end of that line. You know that some of these deep waters hold big fish. Like it could be, I don't know, a 5-inch bluegill, but you could have a 40-inch pike on the other line, or a rare salmon that there's probably only a handful left in the entire lake. So you never know what you're going to get. I mean, we've seen
some holdover stocked fish from years past.
At Onota, it was in the summer. We were fishing off a boat, and we saw about a 40-inch pike get caught on a piece of corn. Right. So like you never know what's going to happen.
One of the other great things about really not only what we're talking about today, but this project in general and what I want to do with this podcast and the people I talk to is to showcase everything that is available to people who live in Southern New England. And one of the things is if you like fishing and if you want to get into having that sort of experience in the outdoors or harvesting your own food, whatever angle you come at it from, you are utterly spoiled to live in this part of the country because you have shoreline access on Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. You have access to deep water off, in the Atlantic. You have opportunities to ice fish. You have great freshwater fishing. You have ponds, you have lakes. There's so many different ways that you can get into it. And you guys, I mean, it's like funny that you kind of honed in on the one thing that's like most rare,
right?
The ice fishing aspect of it. Yeah. But and you only get to do it a couple times a year, right? I mean, it's not like you're not doing this year round. You're doing this a very, very small portion of the time.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to ice fish during the summer. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard.
Max.
January to March, if you're lucky, and then if you go real north, maybe April. I mean, the latest we ever ice fished, I think, was Easter in the Berkshires, and you went through near the you fell through near the shore, but he was all right. Yeah,
yeah. Dan wasn't too worried.
Something you want to avoid.
Well,
yeah, he could touch. Yeah.
What do you think it provides for you spiritually, mentally? What does it mean to you to be out fishing?
Yeah. You want to start?
Yeah, it's part of my life. I mean, you get out there, it's peaceful, you relax. I don't get upset when I fish. It's fishing, not catching. You go, if you catch, it's great. And there's certain rushes, when you get a bite, certain types of species, meeting other people. But you're outside, whether it's raining or not, good weather, I just like it. But when it's good weather, you're out there, it's beautiful. Yeah. You're out there with nature, it's nothing better. You appreciate, the simple things maybe. There's no worries.
Totally. No, it's very grounding. Love being outside in nature, just looking around. Regardless of the fishing, just being on the middle of a lake, especially ice fishing, you're in a place where you shouldn't be able to stand. It's just like a cool perspective looking around, and especially in the summer, just like gorgeous scenery. Way to bond with my dad and family, which is exciting. And it gives you a really good time and place where, regardless of what you catch, you're like, oh, our annual trip this year, this story happened. We talked about this. And we've been doing our annual ice fishing trip for, I think, 10 years now. And that's just the ice fishing portion. So, so lucky to have even that opportunity to do it over and over again. So, no, it's really exciting to bond with family, friends, and then it's very grounding on the fast paces of life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I feel very fortunate to have that access and to all the opportunity that we have. I wish that we could keep talking. We are unfortunately basically completely out of time right now. Thank you both. I really appreciate you coming on, sharing not only with us today what it is to you, but throughout your lives, everything that you share with people and your graciousness it means a lot. And I want to just say thank you personally for everything you've done for me to get me out and have a new experience. I've really loved that.
Well, Max, it's great. Remember you when you were 6 years old, played Little League at Verplank.
Sure.
And then to see you now. And
I'm about the same size.
Fishing. Yeah. You were probably bigger than me then, but
No. Thank you again. Fishing's better with friends, so we'll keep doing it.
Yeah. Cheers to that. Well, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.